Hello and welcome back to another tutorial. In this tutorial we'll be doing rain. I said I was going to do horse, but didn't get time to get that rig fully done, so we'll be doing rain this time. So what we should get by the end of this tutorial is this. So as you can see, there's loads of rain and it's splashing down onto the ground. So yeah. Okay, well for starters you're going to need a Minecraft world. You can either have all this already set up and all that, or for an animation you already got planned, or for this just find one and cut a big chunk out of it so you don't have too much to see, only enough that you're going to need. So for starters, we do not want to use rain everywhere because it will just take up way too much RAM, and if the viewport would be incredibly slow, the render would be very slow because of the amount of particles on the screen that aren't even in the camera. So as you can see, we've got all this area, but the only area that's actually got any rain is the first half quarter of it. So after you've got yourself a world, I've already shown a video on how to import Minecraft world. I made a camera, so I just Control C to create a camera, but it's up to you if you want to do that. So first things first is the area that you're going to want to be covered in rain. So go to create and go to under the drop down box under geometry, go to particle system and choose PF source and just drag a box and then move it to the location you want it to be and change the length and width. So you could use the PF box, or you could do a plane and then use a different option where the particles are spawning from, so they spawn from the object. But for this, I'm just going to use the PF box itself, so PF source. So I'm just going to turn the logo size down to 0 because that's not necessary, and just make it the size you want it to be visible. Make sure it's at least covering whatever the camera is. You don't want it to be too big because it's going to be deflecting everything off the ground, and that's going to take up a lot of RAM and viewport space and rendering time. Okay, so when you've got that already, you're going to want to click on particle view or press 6. So I've already got one here, but I'll just move this back if I can. So this is what you should have first. So what you're going to want to do is click on the speed and delete that. We don't want rotation either, so you can delete that, and you can delete shape as well. So you're left with position, icon, birth, and display. You can, if you wanted to use a plane, like I said, you could change this to a position object, like this one here, and set the plane as the emitter object. But in this case, we're just going to use the PS source. So once you've done that, we're going to make sure everything underneath it we want to particles to deflect off. Now you don't want to just take this entire object and make it a deflectable object, because that will just take up way too much RAM. So the best thing to do is click on the imported world that you've done and go into the polygon option, which is the 2D square. I'd recommend converting it to another poly rather than a mesh, but if you're familiar with all the settings, it shouldn't be too much different from doing polygon. So for this case, it was simple because of the material that I wanted to deflect was the same in all places. So all I'd have to do is make sure I was in polygon selection, click on one of the grass squares, and under polygon material IDs it would give me the ID of that grass layer, which would mean I could click on select ID and it would select all the grass, which meant I didn't have an issue with the surface that was actually needed to reflect. Now it's going to be a lot more of a process if you wanted to have more than just that, but it should be quite simple of just detaching the these ones we just selected. So I'm going to click on detach, which is under edit geometry, which you might not see, but it's right there beside attach. So it'll be detach. Detach as a clone and call it something like a deflect surface or something. It's up to you. And then, so if you wanted to deflect more than one material, because you might have stone or sand in between these areas, you could do the same by just clicking on one select ID, which you may actually not be able to see, but polygon material here. You select ID and it'll select everything that's got the ID of 46, and then you can detach that. Now I detached that a bit too early, so as you see I've detached all cloned all the top surface for the grass, but I should have made it so that only the ones that are actually underneath the particle flow. So make sure you do that. So I'm just going to delete these ones that I do not see near the particle flow, because the less that it has to compute, the faster it's going to be. So once you've done that and you have yourself the surface that you want, so in my case I just needed the grass surface. We don't want the sides because that's just extra computing power that we don't need. As you see, this is now separate. It's a cloned version. You want to move that. You're going to probably want to make it so it's not renderable, because if you do, the textures are the faces are going to flicker around. So right click with the grass deflect surface selected, click on object properties and turn off renderable under rendering controls. So turn that off. You may also want to, this could go for whenever you're using your Minecraft world, you might want to freeze it, so you can right click on that, object properties, click on freeze and turn off show frozen in grey. So this will automatically already tick, but mine was already frozen before, so just turn that off so it's not, and then it will be just frozen, but you can still see the textures, which means it won't be grey, which is very good. So once you've done that, what you're going to want to do is go to create space warps, the wiggly aligned one, and under the add a gravity. So under forces, get a gravity and just put that down anywhere. You might want to align it near the P flow so you could keep them all organized, but for now I'll just leave it there. And under space warps, change the drop down box to deflectors and choose a U deflector and drop that down as well. So just drag. So now we got a gravity which will make our raindrops fall, and we got a deflector. So click on the U deflector and under pick object choose the grass object we just chose, and now we have that. We're going to click back onto our P-flow and press 6, but sometimes that doesn't work, so you can always click on your PF source and go to particle view. And let me just turn this one off because it's might get in the way. Okay, so what you're going to want to add now is, you should have a big list of things down here. I believe they've kept that with every version since 2012, so just drag a force in. Now make sure it's a blue line and not a red, or else you'll overtake, it will delete the one under it. So click on that, and with force selected, click on the add and add the gravity. You could go by list as well, but that's up to you. So after you've added that, go to collision. So add a collision, so drag that in. And then we're going to want to drag a spawn into the open background, so don't put it into the event that we just created there. And then we're going to link these two, so just you should have this little X icon by the collision, and just drag it into the circle here. Right, and once you've done that, you're going to want to add another collision into this second event we just created here. We're also going to want to add force, so you can probably just hold down shift on the first force that we've already added, and then drag it into the other event. And you can either copy or instance. I'm going to instance it for now, but you might want to have separate properties for both the droplets, because this first event is going to be the rain that's dropping, and when it hits the ground, this second event will happen. So everything in here. So when we click on the collision again, and we're going to add the U deflector. So make sure you have that in for the collision, and then again for the other collision as well. So make sure you have U deflector. So just click on add or by list and add the U deflector. So when these particles hit the surface from this collision, it's going to activate this second event here, which will spawn more particles, which will hit the floor, which will then bounce up. So let's just see if that worked. So just go through and see if that worked. As you can see, it has worked. It's just that the bouncing is way too high. So you're going to want to edit that. So just go to the bounce option under the U deflector we just created, and we're going to change that to something like 0.1. Just experiment with this kind of thing. Now you may also have another issue that I've noticed happening, where the particles disappear randomly at a specific view, possibly. If that happens to you, just simply in the particle view, delete the PF source and then Control Z and bring it back. Normally that will fix it. It's a weird bug, but it's very easy to fix, and it shouldn't happen again after that. So if you didn't have that bug, then you shouldn't have an issue. But if you have a camera, then you can easily see a better closer up view. And as you can see, once they've hit the ground, because the second event has a different color, which it normally will change. If it hasn't, you can just click on the little colored dot under the display and change that to a different color if it's the same as the first event. And as you can see, all these blue dots randomly spawn instead of these pinkish ones. So as you can see, which is good. You may want to also change, to make it just look a bit better, change the ticks under for the first event for the display to lines, and change for the second event, instead of ticks, to dots. So you might get a better representation of what the final look will be. As you see, it spawns another particle, so there should be 2 particles after that, but we're going to change that. So click on the spawn in the second event and change its offspring to something like 5 or 10. It's up to you. You can experiment with this kind of stuff. As you can see, we got now more particles spawning, but you're going to also want to make sure that they're bouncing as the correct amount. So you could, again, tweak all this stuff. I'm just showing you what mine is like, but you can definitely tweak it to be a lot more. Now make sure as well, when you have a lot of particles on the screen, that you don't edit these settings while it's mid time stream. Luckily there wasn't many particles on here, but if there was a lot, it can crash your computer. So make sure you often save, because particles flow can sometimes be very temperamental when a lot of particles on the screen and you decide to change something. Now, as we look through here, it's looking a lot better, but as you can see, these particles stay. Now, we don't want that because usually after a few seconds, you won't see them. They usually be just flat on the ground, you wouldn't see them. They'd be in water puddles in it. So what you're going to want to do is add a delete. So drag that into the second event at the very bottom, and click on that and change the biparticle age. Do something like 10 or 5. I'm going to put in 5 and just keep experimenting. That's all I can say, because a lot of this is quite simple when you understand it, but it's quite complicated when you first start off. So as you can see, the particles are all eventually dying off, which is very good. There you go. So again, as it's only 30 seconds, so we need to change that. So click on the birth, which is the green icon in the first event, and this is where we can change the particles and how long it emits. So for mine, it's only 100 frames long, but if you got a scene that's 300 frames long or something, you can change the emit stop to something like 300 or 100. Now, as you can see, it doesn't start off raining, so you may want to change the emit start as well to something like -100. But I'd make sure you've got it saved before you do that, because that means it's going to spawn a lot of particles. As you can see, it's already raining from very first frame, so if you needed it to start raining instantly at the beginning, always change the emit start to something before your original time frame. And also you're going to want to probably change the amount of particles as well. So you can do amount, and by amount it's the amount of particles over the entire amount of frames. So there's 200 frames it's going to go through, so only 200 particles over the 200 frames. So every frame is going to have only one particle spawn. If we go by rate, it's going to go by how many per frame. So it should go by 60 every frame, or every second, I'm not 100% sure. So yeah. So you're going to probably want to change that. I changed mine to about 800. But be warned, make sure you save before you mess around with anything. Make sure you save a lot for particle flow kind of things, because they can crash, like mine, which hopefully will fix itself. Hopefully. Yep, there you go. Luckily. But make sure you save before you do anything like that. So as you can see, very, very laggy in the screen, but it looks a lot better. So yeah, so I think we've got the basics down here, but now we just need to make what the actual particles are going to look like when it's rendered. So at the moment, if you render it, nothing's going to be there. So I would recommend you change the rate down to something like 30 or 50 when you do this, because if we had 800 particles on the screen, or around 800 or whatever particles on the screen at once, and they're all geometry, it could slow down your computer to the extent it crashes. So I'd lower that for now. And what you're going to do is we're going to use for the droplets after the object has hit the ground as just a basic square, so we don't have to worry about that. But for the first particles, we're going to want to create a box. So go to create geometry box and create a box. It would load, there we go, okay. And change it to something like 5, 5, 20. So we could change this afterwards. So with that now created, name it something, because we're going to need to make sure we keep this wherever you bring this scene. So rain, just rain object or something. It's up to you. So again, click on your particle view or open it or unminimize it. And you're going to want to go and add a shape instance. So drag that in. Now, I'd also recommend, if you have changed the emit start something, change it back to 0, because that means that you're always going to have a safe frame where nothing's spawned yet, so that means it's not going to crash your computer or whatever you change. So make sure you have emit start 0 for this. You can change it later on when you've got everything all ready and you want to make it for your entire scene. So with shape instance now added, so we click on that, we can now add a object to it. So on the known, click it and click the little box we created. Now if I go through the scene, you're gonna see it hasn't changed anything, but we've got it there. This is because we need to change the display. At the moment it's on lines, but we need to change that to geometry. So as you can see now, after it's respawned, you might have to go back to 0 for it to respawn. You can see all the rain is now the object we created, and we can change that. So you may want to go back to frame 0 before you do this, but depending on your computer, good mine should be able to handle it, hopefully. So just tweak it. So I'm going to go back to down to 2 instead, and length 2. And you might want to change the height to something different. So there you go. So that looks a lot better. You're also going to want to change in the shape instance, once you've changed your rain box to the right size that you want it to be, you may want to change the scale variation. So I'm going to change the variation to about 20%, so that they're not always going to be the exact same. So as you can see now, they drop and they disappear as soon as they hit the floor. It's going so fast you're not going to notice that the droplet just suddenly disappears after one of the frames. So yeah. So once we've done that, we should now have the main droplet. The rain should be fine now. So we just need to do the same for the droplets on the floor, because they won't spawn because there's nothing for it to of geometry for it to show. So what you're going to want to do is add a shape, just a normal shape operator in the particle view. So just add that into the second event. Doesn't really matter where. Top would be alright. And it's already cubed, so if we go for this, and also change the display instead of dots to geometry. Now if we go through here and you see it all drop, you can see the cubes are way too big. So just change the size of the shape. It should be there, here. And just change that to 1 or something. It's up to you how big you want it to be. All depends how. So yeah, this should look alright. You might want to change the scale variation, but that's up to you. So now we got those done, we're pretty much nearly done. So what we need to do now is add a material to it. So we're just going to go to and add a material dynamic to the first event. To the top of the event is best, because I believe it will change it in viewport as well if you do that. So as we have this now connected, you want to open the material editor, so you can press M and it will open it up, or you can click on this symbol here. And with that open, you're going to want to click on one of the standard materials, which should be the first one for you, but that's or the second one, depending on what you've done. And you're going to want to change it to blue, obviously. So just find a tone of blue under diffuse. Just click on the little big massive box for it, and just change that to a bluish color, darkish as well. And you're going to want to change the opacity. Now it all depends how thick you want the rain. So I tried 25, and it looked very you could see it, but it was very difficult to see. So it's up to you. So I'm just going to change it to 75 for now, but you can always change this if you do a lot of tests. So that's pretty much it for the material, but now we need to drag it with the material dynamic open in the particle view. We're going to drag it onto the known, and we're going to click on instance instead of copy. Make sure it's instance. Now that we've got that, we're going to also need to hold down shift, and we're going to drag it into the droplets, so the second event and top, and make it instance or copy. It's up to you if you want to change the material for the second event. So if we go for this now, we should see it coming together. So now, as you can see, they're working. Yeah, that's pretty much it what you have to do. So I'm going to change this. Best thing to do, because you're going to probably want a lot more particles, it's best to quickly render out what it's going to look like as well. So go into render setup and do a test to make sure it looks alright. So I'm just going to click on random frame and just click on render. Whoops. Do a render of that quickly. If it render, so you see, so they're transparent but not too transparent. Now you probably saw it in the video I showed of the rain when it was finished. It looked a lot more motion blur, so we can add that as well. But first, what we're going to do is, as we already know what it's going to look like in the render. Now, to speed up rendering, because speed up the viewport, because you might want to do this and then tweak things afterwards. You're going to want to make sure that it's quick in the viewport. So what you can do is change the display to something other than geometry. So we're going to change the display from geometry to lines, and we're going to change the display for the second event to dots, because we already know what's going to look like in the render. It's going to just slow down the viewport, which we don't need it to. So because we've done this, we can increase the rate a lot higher, and it will hopefully not slow it down as much. Now, as you can see, it is pretty slow, even with the geometry off. But if it was the geometry on, your computer probably would have blown up, unless if it was a very bad computer. But so yeah, as you can see, very slow. So there's one way to fix this for your viewport when you've done everything, and all you want to do is maybe skim through the timeline, make sure everything's alright, is to and maybe also improve render times possibly, is to catch the particles so that it's very smooth in the viewport. So I could explain how to do it, but I found a script that is really useful. I'll leave the link in the description. I won't explain where you put it, but pretty much just go into your program files, Autodesk, 3ds Max, whatever version it is. Could be in programs 86 if it's a 32-bit, but if it's 64, it'll be in program files. And you just put it in scripts. There'll be a folder called scripts. You just put it in there, and once you want to run it, you just go to Max Script, Run Script, and it will usually bring up the script folder instantly. And it should be called something like pflow AutoCatch, which when you go onto the site that I link you, it's gonna have a link to a file. You'll probably click it like I did, and it'll just show you loads of text. Right click and save that. So save target or save link as, depending on what browser you're in, and just save it into your scripts folder, like I've done here. Should be a .ms file as well. So just click on that. So open that, and you'll get this PF AutoCatch. So I'm just going to delete my other one because that's already been catched. But so as you can see, let's just go through it quickly first. And you can see it's really slow. It's taking up a lot of time on the viewport. You can't click on the play button and play it while it's doing this because it'll probably crash your program. So what you're going to do is just click on Catch All. So I'd save before you do this, because it could crash, and if it crashes, you've just lost everything you've done. So make sure you save all the time. There should be auto backups as well, but they do it every 20 minutes, so not worth it. Just click on Catch All, and it'll catch it. It's going to take a reasonable amount of time, but it should come up with OK right when it's finally finished. So yeah, so this will make it a lot quicker in the viewport. I'm not 100% sure if it will affect the render. I don't know if it would have had an issue already, but if it did, then this will definitely improve rendering times a bit. So as you can see, it'll come up with OK eventually. It might take a bit longer for you, don't know. So, and now I can hopefully I can just click on the play, and as you can see, I don't have any lag or anything in the viewport anymore, and it's instantly playing the rain in the viewport, which is very good. So yeah. So if we did a render now, as you can see, it's lines and dots in the viewport. But if I click on render, it's the rain in the render. So one last thing before I go is we're going to make it motion blur. So you may want to not add motion blur, it's up to you. The render times will increase a bit. So what you do is, as I'm using the standard viewport, standard render to show you this. So if you've got any other render, it might be a bit different. But for this one, you just have to go into particle view, click on your first event, or PF source 02 would probably be a good one. Click on it, right click once it's white, right click, go to properties, and you should get object properties, and under motion blur, it should be at the bottom right corner, click on object instead of known, and then press OK. And now if we click on render, it should work. Yep, there you go. See, it is now motion blur. So it's up to you if you want motion blur. You might not want motion blur. It does make it a bit more rounded, so you may not want that in Minecraft, but you can believe you can change the amount of motion blur as well. So you could change it to image. I haven't checked if image works. So you could do a motion blur image as well, and I think you can change it slightly more with the multiplier here. But yeah, so it's up to you if you want to do this. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. So as you've seen in this tutorial, you can add rain whenever you want. If you wanted to, say, have a character running around through this, it should be 100% possible. All you have to do is create another U deflector for every object you want to add. So, and then just add that. But don't use too many, because the more you have, the more RAM and processing power it requires. And particle flow is not very good with multiple CPUs because Autodesk hasn't fixed that yet. But yeah, so thank you for watching. I should hopefully do the horse tutorial next. So thanks for watching, and I hope you, if you got any questions, just leave them in the comments. Subscribe, like, share. I'm working on a few animations, which is why this video is probably coming out pretty late. So yeah, those should be good, hopefully. So thanks for watching.